There's a lot of adult interest. There's unions for adults. There's decision making about adults, but we really have to focus on what's best for children.
How do we change that? The Andrekopoulos exit interview.
You know, I think
best social program I know of is a job, and that is what we do. That's really kind of the starting place to a lot of the issues we're faced with in a community.
And the new head of MATC.
The whole issue around
Next,
social justice
on Black Nouveau.
Really
Hello and welcome to Black Nouveau. I'm Milton Dockery.
And I'm Andrekopoulos. We're glad you could join us.
On this edition, we'll be speaking with the outgoing superintendent of MPS and the new president of MATC.
We'll also tell you about an African American book fair and show you the art of Dan the Potter.
But first, after 8 years as the head of Milwaukee's public school system, William Andrekopoulos steps down this summer. I spoke with him about his tenure and his legacy. Mr. Andrekopoulos, you've been in Milwaukee public school system for about 38 years. Last 8 as superintendent. Why leave now?
Well, I told the board 18 months ago that it would be a good time to retire July 1st. I'll be turning 62, 38 years in the district, so I thought it was time to move on, and I wanted this board to determine who the next superintendent was.
What are your plans after retirement?
Well, just to relax. I'm going to Alaska, actually. For the first 15 days, my wife and I are taking a land sea cruise, do some work around the house, and then I'll keep myself busy. There will be some consulting work and other things that I'll be doing in September.
Okay. How would you rate your tenure as MPS superintendent?
Well, it was real busy. We worked really hard. Our focus really was on moving away from random acts of improvement to a strategic focus on the classroom, improving instruction, improving teacher quality. That's what we really worked on. Our district was real decentralized before I became superintendent, and we really tried to focus on alignment around a strategic plan, increasing the use of data, and obviously we were working hard on dealing with all the financial issues the district had.
Give me some examples of your goal to improve teaching and learning.
Well, the first thing we wanted to do was align professional development, so that was extremely important. And we wanted to create a consistent, aligned curriculum from classroom to classroom, from school to school. Before, we had 20 different math series, 20 different reading series. Every school, every classroom was different. So we really are trying to create that alignment. And then the other thing we've done is we've put some data systems in place so that we have much better information around how to improve instruction. And thirdly, we've really focused the principal role away from management onto instructional leadership.
Give me an example of, or a few examples if you don't mind, of areas you could have improved in.
Always accountability, I think, is a struggle for our district. How do we hold the adults accountable for student outcomes? We're great at holding people accountable for process, but I think that's the opportunity that Dr. Thornton, our incoming superintendent, has, is how do you really ratchet up accountability around academic outcomes?
Any suggestions on how to exactly do that?
Oh yeah, I think you've got to increase the teacher and principal evaluation system to have more measures of, and growth measures around student outcomes.
Now you mentioned teaching and learning. Do you feel that framework is working presently?
Well, we're improving it. We've just had some really a good framework around mathematics, and our achievement scores have gone up 15–18% in math. We've reduced the achievement gap between us and the state and all the ethnic groups in mathematics, and we need to do the same thing in literacy. We've increased the graduation rate near 70%, which is equal to the national average, and we've increased the graduation rate for all the different ethnic groups. We feel really good about that, and that was about really focusing in on building relationships at the high school level, increasing the curriculum and moving forward on attendance. So we've worked hard in those areas. The other thing that we've really worked hard on is increasing the number of kids involved in advanced placement courses, taking the AccuPlacer. If you look here at MATC, for example, there are more children enrolled from Milwaukee Public Schools at MATC in the last 3 years, and that's because of the support we're giving them around the AccuPlacer.
Okay. With those achievement gaps that you mentioned, give me some examples of how you went about doing that.
Well, I think the main thing is creating a belief system in our students and creating an alignment to the curriculum. So what we've done is we created state standards, and we aligned our curriculums to the state standards, and we really focused on providing extra support to students. So we've increased nursing services to kids. We've increasing breakfast program and nutritional services to children. We've increasing CLC's, Community Learning Center, more tutoring and support after school. And we've looked at increasing professional development around the instruction, what needs to happen in the classroom.
You mentioned closing those achievement gaps between minorities, or let's say black and white. Where do those numbers stand now?
Well, they're still pretty wide. Depending on what grade level, we're talking about anywhere between 15 and 20% variance between the various ethnic groups. It widens as we go through the grades from grades 4 to 8 to 10. We see that gap widen.
Okay.
That's pretty consistent with what's happening nationally.
This seems to be a major problem across the country. Why is there such an achievement gap between minority students overall and those of the mainstream population?
Well, I think some of that has to do with just the economics. If we look at the economy and poverty, that has some impact, I think, on the achievement gap. The other thing is, I think, is expectations and belief system. I think we have to have higher expectations for all children, in particular our minority kids. It's important that all of our kids are successful, and I think too often we've left some behind. So it's really raising higher expectations, both from the community, both for parents, and both for the educators in the classroom.
Okay. Now, I guess you mentioned expectation, which is a key term. Oftentimes students feed off of their students feed off of their teachers. If a teacher starts with very high expectation of students, more than likely those students are going to achieve. Do you see that as an issue in MPS?
I see that an issue, in particular at the high school level.
Okay.
I think that in many corners of our district, and working hard to flush this out, we see lower expectations. When we look at the data on the test scores, we do well in content and knowledge. So our kids do well up to grade 4 because we're at the low level content and knowledge. But as we get higher in the curriculum, we're not doing more abstract reasoning, critical thinking, and that's because we're too focused on just basic content and knowledge. And I think that has to do with having higher expectations for our children.
Okay. At a recent symposium of 4 previous superintendents, it was mentioned that there were a lot of advocates for a lot of different interests regarding MPS, but there was no one advocating for the children. Do you agree with that analysis?
Oh, absolutely. I've tried my best as superintendent over the last 8 years to stand up what's best for children. What really disheartens me is, and a good example of this is, we want to close a school. And let's say this school is really, really a low performing school. And the community comes out, the teachers come out, and they say how wonderful the school is. And I say, look, I'm standing up for what's best for children. This school is not producing the results we need for our kids. So you're absolutely correct. There's a lot of adult interest. There's unions for adults. There's decision making about adults. But we really have to focus on what's best for children.
How do we change that?
I think we got to keep putting that topic on the table. We have some core beliefs in MPS that the classroom's the most important place in the district and children come first. And I think we have to make sure that when we make decisions, we have a tendency to do it in 3 buckets. Are we an employment agency? Are we a social service agency? Or are we a K-12 agency? And we need to make sure that being a K-12 agency is far most important in every decision we make.
Are the public schools doing a good job as they did when you first came into the system?
Oh boy, back in 1972, it was a different era, a different time. I think that it's interesting because we've gone through the deseg issues back then. A lot of different things have happened. I think what's happened in our community is the level of poverty has increased, and the significance around poverty is tremendous in our community. When you talk about the housing needs of adults in this community, when you talk of the medical needs in this community, you talk about the educational needs, I think all of them go hand in play, and I think that has a negative impact sometimes on what happens in the classroom.
Okay. Do you think that the media also plays a role in this?
Well, big time. I appreciate coming on today and giving a chance to kind of speak our onions about the system, but many times things are sensationalized. I'd give everyone an opportunity. Come on into our district, see what's going on in the classrooms, visit the schools, and things aren't chaotic as they're portrayed in the newspaper.
Last year, a commission study said that MPS has substantial academic and financial challenges. And I suspect, as a result of that, there was political overtures to change the governance of MPS. In your estimation, what needs to change to make the system successful?
I think having higher expectations for our children. I think that's the one thing. I think that what we need to do is have consistent curriculum. We need to really be more systematic and systemic around what teaching and learning looks like and hold the adults accountable. And at the same time, I think we have to look at financial stability. As you know, we're going through a really difficult budget. We're going to have to lay off employees. And we have to get together the control drivers, the drivers that are taking our resources out of control, whether it's healthcare, whether it's right-sizing the district. We know that we're living in an era where there's not enough money to put into government. and we have to look at ways of controlling our costs. So if we don't do those things, I think it's going to be very difficult for us as we move forward.
Mr. Andrekopoulos, thanks for joining us on Black Nouveau, and best of luck, sir, in your retirement.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Jones, this was made for Mrs. Jones.
Two clay artists spanning 3 centuries meet at the Milwaukee Art Museum's exhibit To Speculate Darkly. Produced in cooperation with the Chipstone Foundation, the exhibit reinterprets the works of 19th century slave and artisan Dave Drake, who's also known as Dave the Potter, through the eyes of Chicago artist Theaster Gates Jr.
My name is Dave. My name is Dave. Dave, pretty simply, was part of a whole team of black craftsmen who were born into slavery and were trained in a set of skills. I mean, Dave happened to be both printmaker and typesetter and potter, among other things. And he was apparently the most prolific and the most astute potter on the Miles Landrum plantation, and as a result was given a fair amount of freedom to make the kinds of works that he wanted to, including the ability to write small couplets, small poems on the shoulders of his pots, and also to sign his pots. So the reason we know so much about him, he's so identifiable, is because he had signature, which so often for the labor class in general was not possible.
Dave's ability to read and write reflects skills that history tells us most slaves did not possess. Gates hopes the exhibit will help viewers question history.
I always assumed that if I saw it on a wall or if I read it in a book, that was truth. And what I've come to realize is that while the facts that are in books might be true, sometimes not, that there are also multiple perspectives about what history means and how things get interpreted. And so a war that was a success for some is probably a war that was a huge devastation for others. And so I think that I feel finally empowered to add another perspective on the historical objects that are around me or that I find interesting.
The exhibit is a multimedia presentation, with the centerpiece being an actual clay pot made by Dave.
On the shoulder of the pot, it says something like, this one made for pork or beef, go find Scott, he'll want his piece, this kind of, and that Dave had a sense that the pot would be used for meat storage. And salted meats was the way you preserve things. You dig a hole, you put a pot in, you put a lid on it, and from meat storage to fermentation to water storage, I think Dave's big vessels, they were to be used.
Gates discovered his interest in pottery quite by accident.
I was studying urban planning at Iowa State, and I needed a design class. I didn't want to take a drawing class. I was pretty good with my hands. And I found myself in the middle of, with my bow tie on and my fancy urban planner slacks, in a pottery studio, completely unfamiliar with getting dirty ever. And that class went well. And by the end of the year that I did that, the slacks were off, the tie was off. I had dreadlocks and a nose ring, and I had decided that I was going to very quickly abandon urban planning for the life of an artist.
Gates' interest in pottery led him to Japanese art and culture, and eventually to Dave the Potter. All of these elements are included in the multimedia presentation.
One of the things that I had shared with Chipstone in the Milwaukee Art Museum was that part of the reason that maybe some populations don't come to museums is because they're not invited. And that maybe I could do this ambassadorial work of not only inviting people, but really having a need for them to exist inside of my exhibition. That need would compel them, hopefully, to want to be a part of it and then want to see themselves reflected in the product, the byproduct of our engagement together. And so I reached out to my Facebook friends in Chicago and reached out to some African American churches and other singing communities here in Milwaukee, and told folk, you know, I need a choir that I can bring together that can sing this music that will help amplify the historical narrative of Dave the Potter. The video is the first rehearsal of the gospel choir singing I Want to Sell My Wares. And Selling My Wares is a kind of anthem for me and Dave, you know, that Dave wanted to sell his wares and I wanted to.
To Speculate Darkly is at the Milwaukee Art Museum through August 1st, 2010.
If you've read Better Than I Know Myself, we have brought back Dwight Dixon and his father, King. Dwight is the one that Jewel left at the altar, for those of you who remember that. And they were already involved in the real estate business, so we decided that we didn't have to reinvent a profession or a character or set up a business. We already had these characters who had this operation going.
As the audience dwells on every word, co-authors Virginia DeBerry and Donna Grant read from their latest novel, Uptown, at Brooklyn's Restaurant and Lounge on West Fond du Lac Avenue.
They were still tight, although Avery spent more time with school friends and less with him. But now she wasn't a high school kid anymore. She was a co-ed.
So Dwight gave in. But you can't run home and tell every little thing you see. He arranged the details. A girlfriend's place where they could crash. A weekend full of parties and dances.
The event was sponsored by UrbanReviews.com, an online resource for African American fiction based in Milwaukee.
I started because of for the love I have of reading. Before the website, I used to read 6 to 8 books a month. And so I decided to go ahead and review books because I saw other websites doing it, and I decided, well, why not give it a try? It's just nice to have something here, have something homegrown, so you can just go across town instead of having to drive for hours and hours.
What is Urban Review doing this summer?
Well, Urban Reviews, we're having our second annual Great Midwest Book Fest, and it's going to be African American fiction authors. It's a little bigger than what we have today, right now.
How many authors will there be?
There will be 10 authors, and there's going to be 2 headline authors. The headline authors are Earl Sewell and Beverly Jenkins, and then we have a good mix of authors that are from Chicago and that are from Wisconsin. That is June 5th, 2010, here at Brooklands, and it's going to be from 1 to 4, and it's free.
And Reader's Choice Bookstore will hold its Milwaukee Festival of Books August 27th and 28th. More information is available at the Black Nouveau webpage on www.mptv.org.
The Milwaukee Area Technical College is a 2-year vocational technical college serving about 50,000 students annually. It is the state's largest technical college and the license holder for MPTV. Earlier this year, Dr. Michael Burke became the 9th president of MATC. Dr. Burke, you've had more than 25 years' experience in community colleges across the country. What motivated you to want to head MATC?
I was on the board of the American Association of Community Colleges, which is really our lobbying group in Washington, D.C., and from that vantage point I got a fairly good view of American higher education when it comes to community colleges, and it was very clear to me that Wisconsin did it right, I think, with the technical college system. I would say the same with Minnesota, Iowa as well. These are remarkable states. Your statutes are very clear in terms of what you want to accomplish with the technical education system. So I knew about MATC long before I applied. It was just fortuitous that this opening happened, and I took advantage of it. It's a remarkable institution. I hear very often it's the best kept secret in Milwaukee. I'm getting a little tired of that, frankly. I want it to be the worst kept secret in Milwaukee. But I think the sometimes I wonder if the community really understands the contribution that the institution is making. It is a remarkable place, and I think we have a certain. I don't think we really understand the complexity of an organization this big and the contribution it's making to the community, even internally. I don't really expect the external community to get it necessarily. We have to, I think, get that message out. We think of the work we do, the mission of the institution in the statutes, when you read the statutes, are very broad. We are doing shortly after this meeting, I'm going off campus to meet with some of the leadership of one of the 40+ community-based organizations that we are affiliated with that are very much, I think, below the radar screen. They're out there. Some of them are faith-based. Some of them are just the many community-based organizations like the YWCA, for example, that we are affiliated with. We have learning centers in. We're doing GED preparatory work. We're doing basic skills. We're doing English as a second language training in the community right now. While we're sitting here, this is all going on off campus, pretty much below the radar screen. You take that to the take it to the other end of the spectrum. We have in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Technical System, according to the Wisconsin Technical System database, we have 38,000 students who have baccalaureate degrees here. We are becoming, in some ways, the new graduate school. I've met many of those students who have degrees like mine in English, who are coming back getting degrees in graphic design. They've got a career in mind that involves both communication skills and computer-based technology. We're providing those kinds of skill sets that aren't necessarily in the kind of baccalaureate degree or master's degree program I was in, frankly. Then you add in all the first responders, for example. In the community, they are trained by us. Most of your healthcare technicians and nurses are trained by us. You just go down the list. We do the apprenticeship training work. There's not much we don't do except four-year degree and graduate programs. All the kind of training needs that are out there in the community are being met by MATC. It's kind of hard to imagine the community without MATC, what that would look like, as well as that network of CBOs out there, doing amazing work with not much resources in the community.
Let's talk a little bit about strengthening job training.
Given what's going on in this community, the recession, what's the offshoring of a lot of the manufacturing that was going on here, it seems like MATC can become really the human resource solution for a lot of the if I could use Ingeteam as an example, the new kind of global economy around energy, around water that is coming into Milwaukee. I've met with the individual here that's on the ground here with Ingeteam about their real human resource needs. They need to hit the ground running. We want to provide them with the staff, the employee base that they need. I think we need that kind of proactive partnership with the leadership here in Milwaukee, so that when we see those opportunities, before the mayor announces that this company is relocating here, we've had this conversation about how we can ease that transition for them, so we can create the workforce that they can then employ. I think it's really the responsibility is on us, I think, to have a kind of proactive approach as we rebuild this economy.
It sounds to me that there's more of a proactive approach, that you really want to be engaged, and that MATC has all along been a pivotal part of the economic growth here in Milwaukee, but now you're making it very visible and sharing it with the public.
Well, I make a joke, and it's half serious. You drive around this campus, I think as you probably came on campus, it's kind of hard to find us, find our logo, find our name. We have whole buildings without our name on them. We're kind of modest, I think, and I think we need to get over that. We need to be actively engaged, and part of my agenda is to become part of the leadership team for this community, along with UWM, along with MPS. I've had the conversation with Superintendent Thornton already. I've met with Chancellor Santiago at UWM, and really want to create this kind of K through 16 pipeline that we're a part of.
I've attended some of the community events that have been thrown in your honor, and one in particular. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And there was one in particular that I was very impressed by your comments. You shared your views on diversity, and you also shared your views on social justice. Can you share those again with us?
I spoke to that during my interview with the board. I talked to them about my commitment to social justice. It's been a part of my career since day one. I began my career as an affirmative action officer in the Dallas County Community College District, 30 years ago. It is part of who I am. It is, I think, the critical issue in America right now. It is something that has been a part of a thread throughout my entire career. If you look through my resume, if you look closely, you'll see that thread of social justice. What attracted me to MATC, and I said this during the interview, was you go on our website, we do not use that word. We don't say social justice as an institution, but we talk about our role historically for 100 years in this community, providing jobs for dispossessed, marginalized people in this community. And it's very clear that we're proud of that. We talk about the working poor and providing skill sets that provide high skill, high wage jobs that you can raise families with. That's how we language ourselves on our website. And that struck me. That, as I've said probably too many times, best social program I know of is a job. And that is what we do. That's really kind of the starting place to a lot of the issues we're faced with in a community. I think the whole issue around social justice is really providing the mechanism by which we overcome social injustice. I know that's a simple definition, but how we deal with poverty and race and class in America. And you can also talk about gender issues and homophobia and all the other issues that go on in America. It is a way to address them, and I'm passionate about it. It's a part of who I've been throughout my career.
And finally, we're going to be celebrating the centennial of
bet.
MATC in the next year. What's on the horizon?
Oh, we have a centennial committee working right now. They haven't quite, I think they're keeping the party under wraps in the near term, but a lot of kind of visual displays of the history on campus, which I'm kind of intrigued by. There's an excellent collection of materials that we have that we want to display, but there'll be a party going on next year. We're excited.
I think the students will enjoy that. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And that wraps up this edition of Black Nouveau. As always, be safe.
And remember, in the coming week, do something to expand your world. Good night.